Hello, fellow Doomers. I'm Nostradamus. Welcome once again to Phone Age News. Now, you may or may not have noticed, but if you follow earthquakes carefully, you may have noticed that there seems to be a lot of something 0.9s reported, and there is a suspicion that earthquakes are being downgraded. So I decided to investigate, and I will now present to you my findings. I delved into the USGS archives, and after a lot of painstaking research, I've fed all the earthquakes into the Doomatron. So let's start at the top. So I began in 2008 when Obama took over for some reason, and in 2008 there was reported 548 magnitude 4.9s across the planet, 512 magnitude 5.0s, and I've done the same for 5.9s and 6s, 6.9s and 7s, and I've done this every year right up to the 8th of August this year. And I thought, I'm going to look and see if there's any funny business going on. So how are we going to do that? Just before I get into it, I just want to point out this irregularity that is on the USGS archives. I've noted down the total number of earthquakes above 3.5 and above for each year. And in 2008 it said there's 20,211, and in 2009 just 9,589. And we've seen each year that we seem to have around about in the low teens. So it just looks to me like loads of earthquakes in 2009 have been shoved onto 2008 records. Looks very strange. Now, the next bit of my calculations, I've listed all the magnitudes with 0.1 in between each one, increments of 0.1. So it starts off at 4.5, started looking at, and the total number of 4.5 magnitudes from 2008 up to the present is 22,512, and I've done this for each magnitude. And when you look at the difference between each one, we seem to find that there's about a ratio of about 1.3 between each magnitude. So, for instance, if you take a magnitude 5, then you would expect there to have been 1.3 times more 4.9s. And go down and see how many of each earthquakes there's been in the 13 years or so. And of course, as the magnitudes go up, they become less frequent. We've had according to USGS, we've had 15 magnitude 7.5s, so just over one per year on average. But taking this 1.3 differential for each year, I've managed to plot a nice graph of a frequency distribution graph, you could say. So going off this 1.3 per increment differential, we plot the nice smooth red curve, and the blue line is the actual number recorded by USGS of each individual magnitude earthquake. And we see we have slightly less than you would expect low 5 point something magnitude earthquakes, but we seem to have an excess of 4.9s. So when we take a closer look at the mid 4s to the mid 5s range, we can indeed see a bit of a bump on the magnitude 4.9s. The mid-range 5 to the mid-range 6s, the graph layout doesn't seem to fit a natural curve in the low 6 range. So that doesn't look as though earthquakes have been reported correctly. This is 13 years of data, so this should be a fairly smooth curve. So I don't know what's going on there. Now when we get into the mid-range 6s to the mid-range 7s, having a zoom in on that, obviously the higher the earthquake, we're dealing with a lower frequency, so we can expect more variability in the graph. Well, we see a huge peak in the 6.9 range. So let's have a closer look at the actual numbers. So for the 4.9 and the 5s highlighted in light yellow, you can see that the funny business started in 2011 when the difference, we seem to have a drop in 5s compared to 4.9s. Same for the magnitude 5.9s and 6s. It seemed to begin in 2016, highlighted in light green. And highlighted in pink, it looks like some shenanigans began in 2014. And I've added up the totals just for the highlighted periods when it looks like the what should we say, funny business began. Right, so when we've added all the earthquakes up, we get for the let's take the left hand yellow one. This is for the 4.9s. There were 7,179 4.9s in the last 11 years. And when you take that as a percentage of the total number of worldwide magnitude 3.5 and over earthquakes planet-wide during the same time period, that works out at 4.198% of all earthquakes. And when you look at the 5s, that comes to 2.733%. And I've done the same for the 5.9s and 6s, 0.253 and 0.186. And for the 6.9s and 7s, 0.032 and 0.015. Now these should be in the ratio of, there should be 1.3 more 4.9s than 5s. There should be 1.3 times more 5.9s than 6s. And there should be 1.3 times more 6.9s than 7s. Okay? In a perfect world, if the earthquakes were being reported correctly. So I worked out the actual ratios that are reported by USGS. For the 4.9s and 5s it was 1.536. For the 5.9s and 6s it was 1.363. And for the 6.9s and 7s it was 2.158. Remember, this should be round about 1.3. So I've took the actual, what they've actually reported, and I've adjusted it so what the figures would be if the ratio was 1.3. So from this I've been able to estimate how many magnitude 5s have been downgraded 479 during the past 11 years. That is 9.3% of all magnitude 5 earthquakes downgraded. It doesn't look as though they've messed about too much with the magnitude 6s. I've only out of 170 something, I think they've only downgraded about 5, which is 2.84%. But when you get to the big quakes, it looks as though they've downgraded 7 magnitude 7s. That is 26.92%. Over a quarter of large earthquakes are being downgraded. I rest my case. So I've just basically proved that they are actually downgrading some earthquakes. If you don't believe me, you can go into the USG archives yourselves and do exactly what I've done. Told you what I did. So what reasons have they got to do this? Is it because they don't want everybody to panic? Ooh, these earthquakes are not as bad as we're letting on. Or are they worried about real estate values? I don't know. Let's move on. Right, while we're on the subject of earthquakes, let's go straight to La Palma. Just look at how many quakes there's been in the last 24 hours. This is all earthquakes. Let's zoom in. All centred just south, mostly just south of the actual eruption. Oh, it's been really rocking. During the past 24 hours, Spain was shaken by 3 quakes of magnitude 4 or above, 45 quakes between 3 and 4, and 100 quakes between 2 and 3. There are also 7 quakes below magnitude 2 which people don't normally feel. So only 7 of all those quakes was below magnitude 2. Biggest quake today, 4.1. Tenerife, 10 hours ago. And the most recent, a 3.1 on La Palma, 13 minutes ago at time of recording. I don't know why it says Tenerife. That's where the 4.1 was earlier today. More magna coming up. That was at a depth of almost 40 kilometres. They reckon with the sulphur emissions at the moment, it's going to be, they're expecting it to last for quite a bit longer. There's going to be no signs of it stopping. Breaking news. Just had a magnitude 6.2 off the south coast of Hawaii. So that will pump some more magma into Kilauea. So that'll be blowing up soon as well. This was the extent of the sulphur dioxide from La Palma a day or two ago. Looks like something out of the film Arachnophobia. Ooh. I thought that this was a very interesting ash cloud formation. Hooray! Noah's monthly methane report came out last week in the June reading of 1888.8. Ooh, all the 8s. And that's 16.8 parts per billion higher than it was in June last year. You can see it's showing a little drop, but it doesn't stay down for long because I've been following it, and next month you'll see it rising back up again. And come September's report, the graph will be off the top above 1900. I can guarantee that because I've been following it and measuring it, and if it doesn't go above 1900, then they're telling fibs. They've also included this nice table and plot to summarise annual increases in atmospheric methane based on globally averaged marine surface data. And as you can see, from around 20... well, apart from the spikes in around 2015, from the low in 2005, you can see that the trend matches what I reported on, what I observed in my previous video. The figures on the left are their reported annual increase of methane concentrations, and as you can see, the last few years it's been exponential, and if this carries on, then as I showed in my video, if this trend carries on, things will get very, very bad very, very quickly. It's now been 5 or 6 weeks that one of the satellites is not functioning properly. So they say. So we're told. So I'm after going off just 2 readings, the AM and PM readings of the METOP B satellite, METOP 1. So who knows? What I've done is I've assumed that the dysfunctional satellite is reading the same increases and decreases week on week to come to my figures, but the data is limited, so I've just got to go off what I can get. So as you can see, surprise surprise, the rapid increases prior to the satellite going down is levelling off to some degree. You can see here where my mouse is. This is the dip that Noah, you saw in the Noah graph for, is it June? Well, like I said, that won't last long. It's straight back up again, and it's going to go off the scale by the time Noah get round to reporting September's figures, if they're honest. You just have a look at the last 40 weeks or so. It's obvious, you can see where I'm having to work with limited amount of data the best I can. So it could be worse, it could be better, this could be actually spot on. I should say this is for the lower atmosphere from 931 up to 300 millibars as a whole. This is just looking at 300 millibars in particular, and surprise, surprise, methane levels have suddenly levelled off just as the one of the satellites goes down. I don't know whether my microphone's going to pick this up, but Pudsy's snoring away in the background. Right, this is for 451 up to 477 up to 151 millibars. This is the upper atmosphere as a whole. Same again here, it's levelled off since I'm only going off one lot of satellite data rather than a conglomerate of two satellites. But you can see that it was this time last year it did the same thing 12 months ago when it began to level off. And it's same things reflected in, this is just looking at 151 millibars, the higher extent of the atmosphere. It's actually the one satellite's actually recording a drop in methane levels. So make of that what you will. So there's absolutely no reason for anyone to panic, because the NOAA may be fiddling the methane data just like the USGS is fiddling the earthquake data. So everything's fine. Right, let's have a look at NASA Ozone Watch, shall we? This is the latest update from a couple of days ago on the 8th. Big fucking Antarctic ozone hole, not getting any smaller. In fact, it's gone worse. It's supposed to be recovering now at this time of year, because it's been so cold in Antarctic. For what has been their winter, the ozone hole's grown. At least that's what they're blaming it on. The ozone area now stands at 24 million square kilometres after hitting a temporary high of 25 million square kilometres. But the minimum Dobson units are sunk to a record equaling 92. I say record equaling. Let's go down and look at the records. In 1994, when it was the worst it had ever been, it was 92. And now we've reached the same depths. So let's hope that NASA isn't painting a rosy picture like USGS and NOAA, and hope that things aren't actually even worse than what they're reporting. Because this is end of life on the planet. Good night, Vienna. This is AccuWeather's report on the extreme cold that's been observed in Antarctica for the past few months. The coldest place on Earth just had its coldest winter on record. Unprecedented bouts of extreme heat and increased ice melting events have become the common topic of global warming worries, but in the South Pole, the opposite effects have been just as jarring in recent months. Unlike its flashier cousin, the North Pole, which has been made famous for its mythical holiday residents, the South Pole hasn't been as directly exposed to the effects of a heating climate, while rising temperatures and melting ice shelves have caused some worry for climatologists. The South Pole has been largely spared from the effects seen at the North Pole, which has endured widespread glacial melting and was even shrouded in wildfire smoke this summer. Well. But in the vast tundra of Antarctic ice at the South Pole, temperatures plummeted to levels never seen before this past winter. At the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, located on the highest plateau of Antarctica, average temperatures from April to September, the continent's winter months, fell all the way down to 78 degrees below zero Fahrenheit, 61 degrees below zero Celsius. Brrr. And that wasn't the lowest temperature of that range. That was the average. According to data kept by the British Antarctic Survey, the 2021 winter's harsh temperatures were the lowest in more than 60 years. The research team, which is part of the National Natural Environment Research Council, has been tracking temperature data in the South Pole since 1957 and had never recorded a winter this cold. The lowest minimum temperature recording from Russia's Vostok station was an impressive 110.9 below zero, that is 79.4 below zero centigrade, on September the 30th. At that time, the AccuWeather real field temperature was 122 below. According to the Washington Post, the harrowing season can be blamed on a persistent polar vortex that surrounded Antarctica for the entire winter. That intense polar vortex can be partially tied to the weak La Nina conditions that returned later in the southern hemisphere's winter, AccuWeather senior meteorologist Jason Nichols explained. That vortex was most intense in July and August, Nichols said. Even after weakening some in September, it still remained overall fairly strong. Basically, the winds in the polar stratosphere have been stronger than normal, which is associated with shifting the jet stream toward the pole. NOAA atmospheric scientist Amy Butler told the Post, "This keeps the cold air locked up over much of Antarctica." The comparison between the rest of the world's spiking temperatures and Antarctica's new depths of bitter cold is shocking, as climatologist Zach Laib depicted on Twitter. And there was there's his plot, and you can see just Antarctica absolutely freezing, rest of the planet burning up. Experts are urging people to read into Antarctica's winter temperatures with caution, however. One single season of extreme temperatures, whether hot or cold, shouldn't be used to analyse entire climate trends. One cold winter is interesting, but doesn't change the long-term trend, which is warming, University of Washington atmospheric scientist Professor Eric Steig told the Post. Well, who knows what surprises planet Earth may have in store for us in the coming months and years, whether we're still here or not. I'm still not ruling out the possibility that we're going to flip into an ice age. It'll be the Earth's way of protecting itself, like going into hibernation to stop it going into a forever runaway Venus-like state from which it will never recover. That's my thoughts. Maybe a few people will witness it. There's something fishy going on. Hundreds of three-eyed dinosaur shrimp emerge after Arizona monsoon. Their eggs can stay dormant for decades, waiting for water. There's a picture of one of the shrimps called a Triop, a small three-eyed crustacean from the Ball-Court Pond at Wupatki National Monument in Arizona. Following a torrential summer downpour in northern Arizona, hundreds of bizarre prehistoric-looking critters emerged from tiny eggs and began swimming around a temporary lake on the desert landscape, according to officials at Wupatki National Monument. These tadpole-sized creatures, called Triops, look like little mini horseshoe crabs with 3 eyes. Lauren Carter, lead interpretation ranger at Wupatki National Monument, told Live Science their eggs can lie dormant for decades in the desert until enough rainfall falls to create lakes that provide real estate and time for the hatchlings to mature and lay eggs for the next generation. Triops appearances are so uncommon that when tourists reported seeing them at a temporary rain-filled lake within the monument's ceremonial ball court, a circular walled structure 105 feet across, the monument staff weren't sure what to make of the critters. So this is where they've found them. A fascinating little creature. Laura gaggle. I bet she's good for a laugh. Three-eyed crustacean. Triops, which is Greek for 3 eyes, are sometimes called dinosaur shrimp because of their long evolutionary history. The ancestors of these crustaceans evolved during the Devonian period, 419 million to 359 million years ago, and their appearance has changed very little since then, according to Central Michigan University. Of note, the dinosaurs didn't emerge until much later during the Triassic period, which began about 252 million years ago. There's lots more information on the Triops in this article, but I'm not going to read it all out, so I'll leave the link to it below. If you're that interested, you can go and read it yourself. But I'm going to finish off by reading this little bit where it says, Triops males and females typically pair up to mate by sexual reproduction, but in times of scarcity they have other means. These crustaceans are also hermaphrodites, meaning they can go and fuck themselves. Well, that's it for today, I think. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I think it's important in this short time we have left to all be nice to one another. I think there may be something beyond our physical existence, possibly. I think we all need something to believe in at this time. So you all take care and stay safe. Love to everyone. Goodbye.